I will permit no man to narrow and degrade my soul by making me hate him. Booker T. Washington.
Copper, you're my very best friend. And you're mine too, Tod. And we'll always be friends forever, won't we? Yeah, forever.
One of Disney's greatest works, The Beautiful Tale of the Fox and the Hound. An inspiring but also tragic tale about what can happen to friendship if you give in to the racial divide that society tries to indoctrinate into you. Children are a beautiful thing. Children inspire us because they remind us of a different time, a simpler time. A time where we were more distant from the expectations that society put upon us. A time where we were literally colorblind. We didn't see race, we only saw friends, and children's distance from society's norms makes them racially blind. This is good the way it is. Now in this video I'm not only going to be ragging on white supremacists but also black supremacists. Yes, that is a thing and I'm not afraid to point it out because I don't adhere to any of the two since I'm mixed race myself. I was never part of any of the societally prescribed racial norms, so I was always able to see the hypocrisy in every single one of them. I was raised to believe that race does not have to play a part in how you portray yourself as a person. I was raised to believe the truth that the smallest minority is always the individual, so the individual needs to think for himself and not as part of just a group mentality. Race is nothing more than a societal structure that has been shoved down our throats for generations now, and it has divided us more than anything else. It truly is the root of many of our problems, and it will be the cause of much suffering if it doesn't end now.
Oh no, not my friend Copper. He won't ever change, and we'll keep on being friends forever. Won't we, Big Mama?
Darling, forever is a long, long time, and time has a way of changing things.
The Fox and the Hound, one of my all-time favorite Disney movies. The story of a little orphaned fox named Tod and his best friend Copper, a bloodhound, trained and predestined to hunt wild game like rabbits, badgers, and foxes. Not your usual friendship, but Tod and Copper met one day in the forest and unbeknownst to their future prescriptions, they started to create an incredibly special bond. A bond of mutual trust and mutual reliance. A bond that is as old as life itself. A bond of friendship. Tod and Copper spent most of their early life with one another, running around in the tall grass, playing hide and seek, and going for the occasional swim in the lake. But as we all know, life can be cruel and hard-hitting. Copper's owner Slade is a game hunter who trains his dogs to help him out in the hunt. Dogs that should be the best at tracking wild game and not dogs that can be playing around with the prey itself.
You're all tied up. Yeah, and it's no fun either. Master says I gotta stay home.
I would like to say that the movie proceeds to go into a more lighthearted direction from here on out, but the truth is that shortly after, Slade decides to take Copper and his older dog Chief on a long hunting trip. A trip that will teach Copper everything he needs to learn to become a professional hunting dog, a professional killer. Because at the end of the day, that is what hunting dogs were bred to be. During the trip, Copper is learning how to sniffle out the smallest hint at an animal, a process that turns him into one of the best hunting dogs there is. But on the other hand, Tod is just living his life like before. He's eating just like before, he's playing around with his friends just like before, and he's simply being himself just like before. But there is one thing that has changed. Suddenly, everyone is telling him to look out, watch out, and be careful around his best friend Copper. The society around him is telling him that what he believes is wrong and that his best friend is going to come back to hunt and kill him. Everyone and everything is going against them. A difficult task for any friendship. And once Copper finally gets back from the hunting trip, he is a different dog. A mature dog, a dog of status and a dog that is proud of what he has accomplished. He is very different from when we last saw him, but he still believes in the friendship that he shares with Tod. But all of this changes in one crucial night. During one night, Tod goes onto Slade's property and is then hunted off by Slade, Chief, and Copper. And during said hunt, Chief is hurt very badly. Copper is furious with Tod and vows revenge. The friendship, now dead. Society has gotten to them and disrupted another beautiful friendship.
We're still friends, aren't we? Tod, those days are over. I'm a hunting dog now.
Before I get to the end of the movie, let's first define race. The most common definition of race that you will find is the following. A race is a grouping of humans based on shared physical or social qualities into categories generally viewed as distinct by society, an identity which is assigned based on rules made by society. While partially based on physical similarities within groups, race does not have an inherent physical or biological meaning. In other words, race is any one thing that society currently deems to be race. Race doesn't exist if we don't want it to exist. It works like money, really. It only has as much value as we currently want it to have. Money in and of itself is worthless. You can't eat it, you can't drink it, you can only burn it, and even then, only the fire it creates has any actual value. So if race is just a social construct, why is it so strongly engraved inside of us, and not only in the West, but inside of every society around the world? Well, it's because in the name of race, so many horrible things were done. Jim Crow laws in America used to oppress African Americans in the past. Sharia laws in most Islamic countries oppress white Christians and Jews to this day. And of course, not that long ago we had one of the worst cases of racial injustice during the Second World War. Race has caused so much death and anguish, so much loss and oppression. It is one of our greatest evils and it is being used as a weapon to this day all around the world. So many people don't want to let it die because they want to use it again to get justice. And it will never die until we allow it to die. Race is indoctrinated into us from an early age on. We used to be colorblind, but because of the media's attention to race, we see nothing else but color. We have been indoctrinated into believing that we are inherently different because of the pigmentation of our skin. We were bred to be bloodhounds, even though we aren't.
Tod, if it's the last thing I do, I'll get you for this.
In the Fox and the Hound, Tod and Copper almost kill each other in the final showdown. But before that could happen, a bear attacks Copper and Tod is reminded in that moment of their friendship. Of what they used to be before society shoved its hand into the midst. In that moment he is reminded that they are best friends. Reminded that his best friend is still in there somewhere. So he takes a leap of faith and attacks a humongous bear to save him. A task that you can only expect from someone who truly loves you. And Copper then also wakes up. Once the bear is fought off and Slade goes to finally put Tod to rest, Copper saves his old friend. He literally stands in between his friend and the society that changed him in the first place. He as well realized that he doesn't have to be what society expects of him. He can think for himself and be more than just a pawn.
Come on, Copper. Get out of the way.
The movie ends with them still friends but living separate lives, and I've heard the argument that this implies that the movie considers segregation to be the only way for humans to live with one another. But I have to say, this is utter nonsense. I mean, where would I fit in that society? I'm mixed race. But no, what the movie is actually implying is that if two different species can be friends with one another and accept one another, then two different races, something that doesn't even have any true value at all, should be capable of a whole lot more than just that. In this movie we are taught to not see everything through the lens of race, and Tod and Copper had it even more difficult than just that. They are descendants of two different species. That makes them literally different. They can't breed with one another and they don't naturally live with one another either. But Tod and Copper made the impossible a little less impossible. They show to us that we humans are so pathetic to only see things through a lens of race. Of thinking that you are superior because you are white, or thinking that you are morally superior because you're black. It's disgusting, really. The articles you can find nowadays are inherently racist. From white people, it's time to resign, all the way to, dear white people, if you have ever said any of these things, then you are part of the problem. Just reverse the roles and read it aloud. You get my point? You can't fight racism with more racism. You can't fight fire with fire or water with water. It's illogical. It will only breed more racism. And as long as we keep on clinging to race and the problems it caused in the past, we will never be able to grow past it. White, black, Asian, Hispanic, Latino, whatever. Now that under the law in the West, all races are treated equally, the best thing we can do to stop racism dead in its track is to stop talking about it. To start looking at each other through a lens of individuality. To unify and fight back against the media narrative that the white supremacist is back and that we need to fight him off by condemning all white people. Now, don't get me wrong, white supremacy is just as bad as black supremacy, but the reason I'm highlighting the latter is because it has become mainstream. It has become acceptable to criticize whites for being white, but if you only dare to look at a black person the wrong way, well, then you're a racist and a Nazi, and you'll be fired for it as well. This has to stop. We have to unify again. We have to start realizing that we are all humans, no matter the color of our skin. If we keep this division up, the future will look dark. But if you let yourself be inspired by the story of Tod and Copper, the story of the Fox and the Hound that learned to love one another, then we can finally start coming together. We can then finally love and embrace our neighbors instead of shooting them down. We can then finally fight off racism by simply not talking about it, because race is not a thing. Instead of preaching gender, skin color, and race, let's be inspired by Tod and Copper and unify through love and grace. Thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to subscribe and check out one of my previous videos right here. This channel is all about looking at video games and pop culture from a different perspective, about digging deeper into the meaning of life and how we can get there with video games, movies, and TV shows. So if that interests you, maybe subscribe, maybe hit the bell to be notified. What about that, huh? Yeah? Okay, good. See ya!
There's no war in Ba Sing Se.